I collapsed onto the dew-kissed grass of the football field, my chest heaving like a bellows in a forge, every muscle screaming betrayal after 2 grueling hours of sprints under Coach Harlan's merciless whistle. The sun had dipped below the Ohio horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges. But the ache in my lungs wasn't just from the run. It was from the lie I'd been sprinting toward my whole life. Then, from the edge of the bleachers where the shadows pooled like spilled ink, a low voice cut through the twilight. "Easy there, champ. You look like you just lost a fight with a freight train." I jerked my head up, vision blurring, and there he was, Beckett, the school gardener, stepping out of the gloom with a battered thermos in one calloused hand, his other extended like an anchor in a storm. He wasn't much older than me, maybe 25, with that effortless ruggedness that made the small-town girls whisper in the hallways. Broad shoulders under a faded flannel shirt rolled to his elbows, jeans streaked with the day's soil from tending the manicured lawns and flower beds that framed our forgotten corner of Milford High. His dark hair fell in unruly waves over his forehead, and his eyes, a piercing hazel that caught the last light like polished amber, held no judgment, only a quiet concern that hit me harder than any tackle. I'd seen him around for months, pruning the rosebushes by the parking lot, raking leaves under the ancient oaks that lined the track, but we'd never spoken. Not until now, as he knelt beside me, unscrewing the thermos cap with a soft hiss of steam. "Here," he said, pressing it into my trembling fingers. The water was cool, laced with a hint of lemon, and it slid down my throat like forgiveness I didn't know I needed. I choked out a thanks, wiping my mouth with the back of my hand, feeling exposed under his gaze, like he could see straight through the armor of my Letterman jacket to the secrets I'd buried deeper than the field's irrigation lines. "Noah, right?" he asked, settling back on his heels, the scent of fresh earth and pine clinging to him like a second skin. I nodded, surprised he knew my name. Most adults here barely registered us jocks beyond our stats on the scoreboard. "Beckett," he added, as if I might not know, though of course I did. The whispers said he was new to town, drifting in from Cleveland after some vague family trouble, taking the groundskeeper gig to keep his head down. But there was nothing subdued about the way he smiled then. A crooked tilt that crinkled the corners of his eyes and made my pulse stutter in a way that had nothing to do with exhaustion. That night, as the cicadas started their chorus and the first stars pricked the velvet sky, we talked, or rather, he talked, and I listened, too drained to do much else. He asked about the practice, not the scores or the plays, but how it felt, the burn in my legs, the rhythm of breath syncing with footsteps. It was the first time anyone had cared about that part, the raw underbelly of the grind. I told him about Coach's tirade earlier, how he'd benched me for a lack of fire, code for doubting my commitment because I'd hesitated on a hit, my mind elsewhere, tangled in thoughts I couldn't name. Beckett nodded, like he got it, his fingers absently tracing patterns in the dirt beside us. "Fire's overrated," he said softly. "It's the steady burn that lasts, the kind that warms without scorching everything down." His words hung there, heavy with meaning I wasn't ready to unpack, but they lodged in my chest like embers. By the time I dragged myself home to the sagging ranch house on Elm Street, the thermos still clutched in my passenger seat like contraband, the encounter replayed in my head on loop. Mom was in the kitchen, humming along to some old Springsteen record while stirring chili on the stove. Dad slouched in his recliner with the TV droning ESPN highlights. They were good people, salt-of-the-earth Midwesterners who'd scraped by on factory shifts and church potlucks. But their world was straight lines. Football Fridays, Sunday sermons, and the unspoken rule that boys like me didn't veer off script. I'd known I was gay since freshman year, when a stolen glance at Jake Riley in the locker room turned my stomach to knots. But admitting it? That was a one-way ticket to exile in a town where faggot was still casual currency on the field. The next morning, as I laced up for homeroom, the memory of Beckett's voice pulled me through the monotony. English with Mrs. Hargrove dragged, her drone about the Great Gatsby. All that doomed longing, mirroring the churn in my gut too closely. Lunch was the usual gauntlet. Tray of mystery meat, the roar of the cafeteria like a coliseum. My best friend, Tyler, slammed his fist on the table, recounting last night's conquest with cheerleader Sarah, his laugh booming. "Your turn, Noah. When you gonna seal the deal with that sophomore, what's her name?" The table erupted, eyes on me, expectant. I forced a grin, muttering something about playing the field, But inside, the walls closed in. That's when I spotted him through the window. Beckett, shoulder deep in a flowerbed by the flagpole. His laughter carrying faint on the breeze as he bantered with the janitor. For a split second, our eyes met across the glass, and he gave a subtle nod, like a secret shared in plain sight. My heart slammed against my ribs, a wild thing finally tasting freedom. Practice that afternoon was hell. Drills under a relentless sun that baked the turf to brittle straw. Coach pushed us harder, his bark echoing off the bleachers. "Hustle, Whitaker! You run like you're scared of your own shadow." I gritted my teeth, channeling the fury into each stride. But by the end, I was spent, collapsing against the water fountain near the equipment shed. Footsteps crunched on gravel, and there he was again, like he'd materialized from my fevered thoughts, a rake slung over one shoulder. "Déjà vu?" Beckett quipped. His tone light but his eyes scanning me with that same quiet intensity. He didn't wait for an invite this time, just leaned the rake against the fence and pulled a bandana from his pocket, dabbing at the sweat beading on my forehead before I could protest. The touch was brief, cotton rough against my skin, but it lingered like a brand. We fell into an easy rhythm after that, stolen moments at field's edge, where the world blurred into green blurs and the air hummed with unspoken possibilities. He'd show up after practices with that thermos, sometimes spiked with iced tea or a slice of pie from the diner where he moonlighted washing dishes. In return, I'd help him with odd jobs, hauling mulch bags that strained my still-sore arms, or clipping hedges while he spun stories of growing up in the Rust Belt shadows of Cleveland, dodging factory whistles and absent dads. "Gardening's like therapy," he'd say, kneeling in the dirt, hands black with soil as he coaxed life from stubborn roots. "You give it time, patience, and it gives back tenfold. No rush, no force, just trust." His words were parables, each one peeling back layers of my guarded self, revealing cracks where light seeped in. One humid Friday, as thunderheads gathered like uninvited guests, he invited me to his place. A cramped apartment above the hardware store on Main Street, the kind of spot where peeling wallpaper met the scent of motor oil from the street below. "Just to clean up," he said, tossing me a spare towel after a rain-soaked practice. "Can't have you tracking mud through the victory parade." I hesitated, pulse thundering, but followed him up the creaky stairs, the air thick with the promise of crossing a line. Inside, it was a snapshot of controlled chaos. Books stacked like Jenga towers, Kerouac, Whitman, dog-eared paperbacks on queer icons like Baldwin, posters of national parks curling at the edges, a single houseplant thriving on the windowsill. He brewed coffee in a dented percolator, the steam curling like secrets, and we sat on his threadbare couch, knees brushing in the narrow space. That's when he asked, voice steady as a heartbeat, "What's eating you, Noah? And don't say the coach. It's bigger than that." The dam cracked. Words tumbled out. The isolation of locker room bravado, the fear of my parents' disappointment, the gnawing void of loving in silence. He listened without interrupting, his hand finding mine in the dim lamplight, thumb tracing slow circles on my knuckles. "You're not alone in this," he murmured, hazel eyes locking with mine, the air between us electric. "I know that road, potholes and all. Came out at 17, lost half my world. But what I found, worth every scar." In that moment, as rain lashed the window like applause, I leaned in, our lips meeting in a tentative brush that bloomed into something fierce and tender. A kiss tasting of coffee and courage, the first real exhale of my life. Summer unfurled like a fever dream after that, our worlds orbiting closer in the lazy haze of Milford's endless fields. Practices thinned as the team scattered for vacations, leaving me with afternoons free to slip away to Beckett's garden plots or the hidden creek behind the old mill, where willows dipped like conspirators into the water. We'd lie on checkered blankets, backs against sun-warmed earth, trading dreams. Mine of escaping to a coastal college where I could run tracks without the weight of whispers. His of buying land upstate, turning soil into sanctuary. His touch grew bolder, a hand on my waist during a shared laugh, fingers interlaced as we walked dusty roads at dusk. But it was always laced with reverence, a romance built on whispers and stolen glances rather than haste. Yet the idol cracked under the strain of secrecy. Tyler noticed first, the way my phone buzzed at odd hours, my excuses thinning like summer grass. "You're different, man," he said one night over greasy burgers at the drive-in, his eyes narrowing over a milkshake straw. Glow or some shit. Spill. Who's the girl? I deflected with a joke, but the seed of suspicion took root. At home, Mom's sidelong glances sharpened when I hummed old folk tunes Beckett had taught me. Dad's gruff, "Everything okay, son?" carrying an undercurrent of unease. Even Coach pulled me aside after a pickup game. "Focus, Whitaker. Distractions get you sidelined. For good." The betrayal came swift as a linebacker blindside. It was mid-August, the air thick with the promise of fall, when Tyler cornered me in the locker room after weights. "Saw you with that Gardner freak last week." He spat, voice low and venomous, phone clutched like evidence. Blurry photos from the creek, our silhouettes blurred but unmistakable. "What the hell, Noah? You're one of them? After all we've been through?" His face twisted, not with hurt, but revulsion. The boy I'd shared bruises and beers with reduced to a stranger's sneer. "I'm telling Coach. Team needs to know what they're playing with." He stormed out, the door slamming like a guillotine, leaving me hollowed, the fluorescent buzz overhead a dirge. Panic clawed up my throat as I bolted to Beckett's, pounding on his door until he yanked it open. Flour dusted from baking bread, concern etching his features. I spilled it all in a torrent. Tyler's rage, the photos, the inevitable fallout. He pulled me inside, arms enveloping me in a hold that smelled of yeast and earth, murmuring assurances even as doubt shadowed his eyes. "We'll face it," he said, but I heard the fracture in his voice, the echo of his own past losses. That night we clung together on his couch, the rain returning like an old foe, our kisses desperate now, laced with the salt of unshed tears, a fragile dam against the flood. Word spread like wildfire through Milford's tinder-dry gossip mill. By Monday, the hallways hummed with sidelong stares, whispers slithering like snakes. "Whitaker's a queer. Hooking up with the help." Coach called me in, face thunderous, Tyler's confession hanging unspoken between us. "This team's about brotherhood, Noah. Trust. You understand." It wasn't a question. My spot on the roster evaporated. Practices a ghost of exclusion. The field that once held my dreams now a barren expanse. At home, Dad's silence grew glacial. Mom's questions tentative bridges over chasms. "We love you whatever," she tried once, but the words rang hollow against the town's turning tide. Beckett bore the brunt with quiet ferocity. Notes smeared on his truck, "Fairy landscaper." Vandalism in the flower beds he'd nurtured. The principal's curt, "Keep it professional" memo, a velvet glove over an iron fist. Yet he never wavered, meeting me at dawn runs along the river, his hand steady in mine as we mapped escape routes. Chicago, maybe, or the anonymity of a big city campus. "Love isn't a spectator sport," he'd say, hazel eyes fierce. "It's the play you run with everything you've got." But doubt gnawed at me, the weight of shattered loyalties, the fear that my chaos had tainted his hard-won peace. The climax shattered on a crisp September eve, homecoming week, when the stadium lights blazed like false stars and the bleachers swelled with the town's collective breath. I'd snuck in to watch from the shadows, a phantom in my old jersey, when Tyler's voice boomed from the announcer's booth, his megaphone confession twisting our friendship into spectacle. "Noah Whitaker's a traitor, to the team, to us all. Outed by his own choices." The crowd's roar twisted ugly, jeers cascading like debris, and I fled into the night, heart a war drum, straight to the field where it began. Beckett found me there, rake abandoned, sprinting across the turf slick with recent rain. "Noah!" His cry pierced the chaos, pulling me from the spiral. But as he reached me, headlights swept the lot, Tyler's truck, screeching to a halt, a posse of teammates spilling out, faces masks of righteous fury. "Stay away from him, you pervert!" Tyler bellowed, bottle in hand, the shatter of glass echoing like a gunshot. Beckett stepped forward, shielding me, his frame taut as a bowstring. "This ends now," he growled, voice low thunder. "You think hate makes you strong? It just makes you small." Fists flew in the melee that followed, a blur of shoves and curses under the merciless floodlights. I dove in, tackling Tyler to the mud, our breaths ragged, eyes locking in a moment of fractured clarity. "I trusted you," I gasped, pinning his wrists, rain mingling with the sting of betrayal. Why? He bucked, face crumpling. Not with anger, but regret. I was scared, man. For you. For me. The fight drained from him, the crowd murmuring, dispersing as sirens wailed in the distance. Coach arrived, dispersing the remnants, his hand heavy on my shoulder. Go home, son. We'll talk. In the aftermath, as Beckett bandaged a split knuckle in his dim kitchen, the silence stretched taut. I can't do this to you, I whispered, the words a knife's edge. The town's poison. It's killing us both. He cupped my face, thumb brushing a tear track, his gaze a lighthouse in fog. Love isn't about easy, Noah. It's about choosing the hard road together. But if you need space, the unspoken hung, a precipice. Weeks blurred into a fragile truce. Therapy sessions in the next county. Mom's tentative olive branches over pot roast dinners. Dad's gruff, proud of you, kid, after a long silence. Tyler transferred schools. A ghost apology scrawled in my locker. Sorry doesn't fix it, but it's start. The team thawed unevenly. A few nods in the halls, whispers fading to irrelevance. Beckett and I rebuilt in increments. Quiet dates at the county fair, cotton candy sweetness masking deeper mends. Long drives to the lake, where waves lapped like confessions. Fall turned to winter, snow blanketing Milford in hush, and with it came a reckoning. Graduation loomed, scholarship letters arriving like lifelines. Mine to a state college track program, his to an apprenticeship in sustainable farming up north. Separate paths, he said one night by the creek. Ice fringed now, our breaths fogging the air. But not forever. We parted with a kiss under the willows, fierce and full of tomorrows. A promise etched in frost. Years later, in a sun-dappled garden outside an arbor, I knelt in soil much like his, coaxing perennials from Michigan clay. My own hands calloused from coaching high school runners who'd come to me with their hidden hurts. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Beckett's handwriting, steady as ever. Found land in Vermont. Room for two. Come run with me? I booked the ticket that night, heart light as spring thaw, knowing the road ahead held no guarantees, but the steady burn? That we'd mastered long ago. In the end, love wasn't the grand slam or the viral scandal. It was the quiet kindnesses, the hands extended in exhaustion, the choice to till the hard ground together. Milford faded to a chapter, its scars faint lines on a map leading north. And as I boarded that train, watching Ohio roll by in verdant waves, I finally believed. Some roots run deep enough to weather any storm.